name is Gabriel Riojas. I'm standing here in Granger Lobby, and I'm with my good friend
Scott Rhodius.
Yes, and we're going to be looking at two pieces of art. Scott, what's the art that we're going to be looking at for you?
Well, the art piece that I'll be talking about today is Banksy's Morons, done in 2006.
Awesome. And I'll be helping you guys, showing you Kandinsky's Composition 7, made in 1913. So let's start with Kandinsky. Vasily Kandinsky made this piece of art in the time of pre-post-war era, before World War I. And we can kind of describe this piece of art as the poster child for abstract expressionism. Kandinsky was a native in Russia. He was born in Moscow to a tea merchant and housewife. He was relatively well off. He had always a fascination with art, but he had a promising career as a lawyer. Mario Naves describes Kandinsky in his article, Kandinsky's Hocus Pocus, as a student of law, economics, and statistics at the University of Moscow. He was on a track for life in academia when inspiration, or rather inspirations, struck.
Wow, I find it so interesting that he had so much going for him and decided to make a switch. I mean, he had law going for him and other things, and he decided to go for art. I mean, what was so special about art that made him want to make the switch?
Well, you see, Kandinsky was teaching law when two events changed the course of his life. So the first was he witnessed Monet's work, The Haystacks. Now, this work just gripped him. He had never seen something like this before. Haystacks were a compilation of different time periods in which we would see the haystacks going through seasons. And for Kandinsky, Monet's pieces emphasized color in a way that he had never seen before. The color itself was commanding the whole painting. The second was experiencing Richard Wagner's opera Lohengrin, which he thought was breaking conventional forms of harmony, lyrics, and melody.
So I feel like to understand Kandinsky's work, we need to understand art that influences him.
Yeah, so Expressionism is a precursor to abstract art. Now in Expressionism, the whole common mantra is invoking emotion into the viewer. And that's what Kandinsky wants to do with Composition 7. He just doesn't want to give you crazy visual experience. He wants you to feel the craziness, the flux in his art.
I see that there's also influence of Fauvism in this painting.
Yeah, definitely. Kandinsky gives us a wide variety of colors to work with.
Yeah, I like how the colors interact with each other and give us a sense of chaos and confusion. Since we mentioned Kandinsky's emphasis on emotion and his want to convey abstract concepts, I see how spirituality could take place in this painting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because Kandinsky himself was a very spiritual-minded individual. In fact, he wrote a book called Concerning the Spiritual in Art. For Kandinsky, spirituality is intrinsically intertwined with creativity. Art, music, and faith were things that transcended the human experience. It allowed for humans to be more self-aware of themselves and each other.
Yeah, so it seems as though the main point of Composition 7 is that art isn't just about technique, it's about emotion and substance of existence.
Exactly. Kandinsky explains in his book Concerning the Spiritual in Art. Animals' movements are almost like those of human beings. The monkey sits and holds a book an inch from its nose, turns the pages, makes thoughtful faces, but there's no sense or meaning in any of these actions. So Kandinsky's painting is very holistic. More importantly, it's not excluding the mechanics of art, the technique, but it's trying to emphasize that art isn't all about that there are spiritual and emotional aspects. And so I just think that Kandinsky's painting overall is just a very integrated piece of work.
Alright, now segueing over to the piece that I chose, Banksy's Morons, done in 2006. Well, let's start with Banksy is a graffiti artist from Bristol, and he creates iconic art pieces that raise awareness and make you think about certain situations that happen within our everyday life, or just twists on the norms of what we see in social media. Banksy is perhaps one of the most famous anonymous artists around.
Wait, an anonymous artist that's famous? How does that work?
Well, supposedly no one has seen his face, and he always disguises his voice in his interviews.
So what makes him famous? Does he make a lot of money off of his art?
Well, for most artists, gaining recognition and selling high-priced art pieces are lifelong aspirations. But for Banksy, his artworks being sold for large amounts of money was not surprising to the fans who love his artwork, but surprising to himself. His piece Morons is a piece used to point out a funny yet insulting way of looking at art.
What is that?
Well, he shows an ordinary auction scene, and in this auction is a white canvas that says, "I can't believe you morons actually buy this shit." And sure enough, there was a moron who bought this piece for £4,200 in London, which is $5,495 in US dollars.
Wow. I just think it's kind of amazing how people will go to such lengths to commercialize art. They really are morons. Who would ever pay that much money for something that insults you? That's like paying someone to slap your face. You wouldn't do that.
Exactly. That's along the lines of what Banksy also thought. He would pay so much money for something that gives you nothing back in return. He thought that by mocking them, he would get a point across that you shouldn't spend so much on art.
Do you think he was angry about people paying so much money on his art? Because what I get from it is that Banksy was thinking that art should be something like Kandinsky's. Kandinsky said art is not about technique, it is about the essence of existence. And I feel like Banksy was thinking of a similar aspect, such as that art should never have a price tag on it, but it should always convey movement, not as a technique, but in a way like you move yourself emotionally and spiritually and to some degree even physically. I feel like good art makes you think, but great art makes you do something about those ideas.
Wow. So what you're saying is that Banksy wants us to really look at art not as a commodity, but as something that has a true meaning to us, something that we understand and that changes our point of view on how things work or how we interact with things daily.
Right. Even though Banksy is kind of trolling on the art enthusiasts as a whole, he is making them realize something about what they are paying money for. It shouldn't be about the name or how it was made. It should be about the feelings you get when in the presence of that art piece and how it affects you as a person.
Exactly. Banksy says that the time of getting fame for your name on its own is over. Artwork that is only about wanting to be famous will never make you famous. Any fame is a byproduct of making something that means something. You don't go to a restaurant and order a meal because you want to have a shit.